Audi continues to target the ever-growing market for premium badged mid-sized 5-seat SUVs with this second-generation version of its stylish little Q3. This car's now cleverer, smarter and more efficient, all of these being attributes it'll need if it's to make headway in this increasingly crowded segment. When it comes to this kind of car, there are certainly cheaper options. The question though is whether there are really any more desirable ones. SUVs don't need to be big to be desirable, and Audi aims to prove the point with this second generation Q3. The Audi Q3 wasn't the first premium badged family hatch-based SUV, but since its original launch in 2011, it's been the one that's tended to define its growing segment. In broader terms, this class can essentially trace its origins to the launch of the first Nissan Qashqai in 2007, which took straightforward Golf and Focus class underpinnings and clothed them with SUV-style packaging. Buyers loved it so much that other manufacturers flocked to copy the concept, including the premium brands who saw great potential for posher versions of this kind of car. BMW's X1 was the first smartly badged family hatch-based SUV to hit the market in 2009, but Audi weren't far behind, launching the first generation version of this Q3 in 2011, which was about the same time as we also saw another defining class contender, the Range Rover Evoque. Since then, this sub-segment has expanded hugely, first with the Mercedes GLA in 2014, then with a more competitive second generation version of the X1 in 2016. In 2017 and 2018, these models were joined by the Volvo XC40 and the Jaguar E-Pace, and in 2019 the Lexus UX and a second generation version of the Range Rover Evoque joined the fray. There's lots of choice then, which gets even wider if you start to consider similarly sized and similarly priced upper spec versions of more mainstream branded Qashqai-class SUV models with pretensions to this posh sub-segment. Cars like Volkswagen's Tiguan, Honda's CR-V and Toyota's RAV4. Maybe even fancier versions of the Mini Countryman, the Jeep Compass and the Infiniti QX30. On top of all that, in 2017, the Q3 gained in-house competition from the brand's only slightly smaller Q2 model, all of which left Audi's fourth best-selling design rather struggling to justify its place, both in its chosen segment and in Ingolstadt's own lineup. Hence the need for this all-new second-generation version launched in early 2019. It's significantly bigger than its predecessor, so there's no longer quite such an overlap with the Q2. Plus, there's a much more purposeful look and a cabin that invites quality comparison with the only slightly larger Q5. To suit the prevailing market trend, it's safer and better connected too, plus you get a strong range of TFSI and TDI engines, now further optimised for efficiency. Audi did well with the first generation Q3, selling 1.1 million examples in a production run that lasted from 2011 to 2018. To give you some perspective, that's nearly twice as many sales as the brand's TT sports car has managed to clock up, and that's been on sale since 1998. With so much segment competition though, it's going to be hard for this second generation Q3 model to repeat that kind of success. What are its chances? We're going to find out. The dynamic standard in this segment has been raised quite a lot since Audi launched the original first generation Q3. Cars like BMW's X1 and Jaguar's E-Pace have shown that it's possible to achieve much sharper handling in an SUV of this kind, while contenders like Volvo's XC40 have significantly raised customer expectations of what's possible in terms of ride quality. Audi claims that this second generation Q3 delivers significant improvements in both those areas, and if you happen to be familiar with the previous model, you'll feel that pretty quickly after taking the wheel. We've particularly noticed the ride quality enhancement, an area We had some concerns about going into this test, given the fitment of such large wheel rim sizes this time round. Yet, even on the big 19-inch alloys fitted to the S-Line variant that we're trying here, this Q3's independent rear suspension setup cushions the bumps really effectively in a much more sophisticated way than its predecessor. Few other class rivals now better it in this regard, to the point where you may not feel it necessary to pay extra for the adaptive damping that's optional on most models. Combine that with exceptionally good refinement and you get an extremely accomplished cruiser. There are significant handling enhancements too, but they come with a typical Audi caveat: somewhat lifeless steering. Which is a pity, because if you can work through that, this Mark II Model Q3 is, as advertised, a big improvement if you want to start pushing it along a bit through the corners. That steering, as standard, comes with Audi's so-called progressive rack, which means that it becomes gradually more direct as you turn, which gives the front end a bit of bite as you pile on the lock at speed through the bends. Body roll is well controlled for an SUV, and aided by the stiffer MQB chassis and torque vectoring, there's plenty of grip and traction even without the Quattro four-wheel drive system, which you can't have on the 150 PS variants that most Q3 customers will buy. Oh yes, engines. You'll want to know about those. Not too much is new here, though Audi's done its best to disguise the fact with a range of new model designations that reference arbitrary power categories based around kilowatt power outputs. Yes, we struggle to understand them too. I just mentioned the 150 PS volume variants. There are two, both available with either 6-speed manual transmission or the 7-speed dual-clutch S-Tronic Auto that I'm trying here. Choose either the 2-litre TDI diesel, badged 35 TDI, or the alternative 35 TFSI petrol variant I'm testing today, which uses a 4-cylinder 1.5-litre unit that will probably be more popular in the current climate, but which has around 25% less pulling power than the TDI, 250 Newton meters compared to 340 Newton meters. That's why, as you would expect, this base TFSI unit has a slightly lower brake towing capacity, 1.8 tonnes as opposed to 2 tonnes. Both engines manage the sprint to 62 miles an hour in a fraction over 9 seconds on the way to a top speed of around 130 miles an hour. To be frank, this 35 TFSI model doesn't feel that fast. We've liked this 1.5-litre engine in other Volkswagen Group models we tried it in, but here it seems to struggle a bit to pull this Q3 along with any real alacrity. It's an easy, flexible companion when you're just ambling along, but start to push a bit and continual transmission down changes are needed to maintain a quicker rate of knots. Now that's probably partly because of this Audi's weight. A 75 kilogram increase this time round leaves it knocking on the door of 1.5 tonnes, even in this entry-level front-driven form, around 150 kilograms heavier than, say, an ordinary Volkswagen Golf. And probably partly because of the engineering changes that Volkswagen Group engineers have decided to make to this TSI Evo unit in order to make it better able to perform under the current stricter WLTP emissions test cycle. If that happens to bother you, or you simply like the idea of having Quattro four-wheel drive in your Q3, then your Audi Centre will direct you towards the other minority interest engines in the range, which have to have 4-driven wheels and S-Tronic transmission. There's a 40 TDI derivative that gets a more potent 190 PS version of the 2-litre diesel, managing 62 miles an hour in 8 seconds dead, en route to 137 miles an hour, and a larger 2-litre petrol unit available in 190 and 230 PS states of tune in the 40 TFSI and 45 TFSI variants. The 40 TFSI derivative makes 62 miles an hour from rest in 7.4 seconds on the way to 136 miles an hour. The top 45 TFSI version makes 62 miles an hour from rest in just 6.3 seconds en route to a maximum of 144 miles an hour, similar to the kind of performance that you got from the previous generation RS Q3 Super SUV model. Whatever power plant you decide upon, to make the most of it, you'll want to make full use of the Audi Drive Select driving mode system that comes as standard across the range. Here, as usual on Audi models, there are various selectable settings that alter throttle response, steering feel, and on S-tronic variants, gear shift timings too. You'll use efficiency for normal use, dynamic if you need a bit of extra urgency, and auto if you want the car to make all the decisions for you. Plus, there's an individual screen that allows you to program in your own parameters, though we can't imagine a typical Q3 buyer ever using it. The settings will also alter ride quality if you've selected that adaptive suspension option I referred to earlier. On Q3s, there's also an extra off-road mode. Yes, really. Audi has tweaked it for greater effectiveness this time round. Choose it and you automatically select the off-road setting for the ESC stability control system, which, as before, adjusts things like the ABS braking and the electronic differential lock to suit muddy or icy surfaces. In fact, Audi claims to have gone to some lengths to maximise this car's effectiveness in slippery conditions. To that end, the latest Haldex clutch setup has been fitted into the Quattro package, plus there's hill descent control. So light field tracks are within this Q3's remit, but anything more testing off-piste is unrealistic thanks to modest approach and departure angles and a limited 170mm ride height that falls further on sportier S-Line variants like this one. All of which leaves us with a useful evolution over what Q3 owners were offered before. If Audi could get its Porsche division to sort out the steering feel, we'd have a potential class leader here in terms of drive dynamics. Likely buyers, though, probably won't care too much about that. They'll simply be attracted by the way that this Smart 2 model is even better at shrinking all the attributes of, say, a Q5, a Q7 or a Q8 into a more manageable, affordable package. You've got to like Audis to love it, but if you do, then you probably will. Audi took a very conservative approach to shaping the first version of this model, toning down the extrovert styling of the Cross Concept Quattro concept car it was based upon. These days, though, SUV buyers expect more of a pavement statement, so this second generation design obliges with a taller profile, boxy flared wheel arches, a less rakish bonnet and a more upright windscreen. It's certainly more noticeable, especially in brighter colours. Particularly here at the front, where there's a more angular octagonal single frame grille with 8 vertical bars. To suit the prevailing fashion, you get these large corner side inlets, along with wedge-shaped slim LED headlights that are paired with LED daytime running lamps and can be ordered with matrix adaptive beam technology. From the side, you might get a better idea of the increase in size this time round. Unlike the original Q3, this Mark II model is a visually much larger thing than its Q2 showroom stablemate. This second generation design measuring in at nearly 4.5 meters long, a length increase of 97mm over its predecessor. That's 46mm longer than a BMW X1. The profile perspectives give them a little extra purpose by this steeply raked D-pillar and a more overt shoulder line that kinks up over the rear door handle to emphasise the pronounced haunches. This deep crease in the lower part of the flanks references the way that this car now sits 5mm closer to the ground and separates the flared wheel arches we mentioned earlier, which can feature black plastic trimming and which apparently draw their inspiration from Audi's Quattro DNA. They house larger wheels this time round, varying in size between 18 and 20 inches. We've got 19-inch 5 twin-spoke dynamic design rims here. The rear will be more familiar to owners of the previous model, though this wider gap between these full LED tail lamps helps to emphasise the 18mm increase in width this time round. This Q3 is now 35mm wider than its BMW X1 rival. This longer roof spoiler cleverly emphasises the roof length, and with this second generation version, the designers have added these cutout sections in each corner of the lower part of the bumper. As usual, what's more important is the stuff you can't see, most notably the lighter, stiffer MQB platform that underpins this Mark II model. This time round, the Q3 is no longer built for Audi by Seat in Spain, but is fabricated at the brand's Hungarian factory in Győr. Time to move inside. Once you enter in through the long doors, which shut with a satisfying thunk, you'll discover yourself to be in the digital age, courtesy of what is probably now the classiest cabin in the segment. You don't get the double screens on the centre console that would feature in Audi's larger models, or the haptic feedback that features with that setup. But the sophisticated graphics from that smartly configured layout feature, and for the first time on a Q3, there's the standard fitment of a digital instrument screen to replace conventional dials. The focal point here at the front is this reductive instrument panel, which features high gloss black finishing and flows from the driver's door to the centre of the fascia, with a row of horizontal vents just above. Together with the air conditioning controls underneath, this panel is tilted 10 degrees towards the driver and is framed by a wide chrome strip intended to reference the car's octagonal single frame grille. It can all feel very high-end indeed if you add in a few extra premium touches, this car's flat-bottomed sports steering wheel for instance, or little details like the optional Alcantara finishing strip that can be specified in brown, grey or even bright orange to run along the top of the dash and on into the doors. Other desirable options include a 680 watt 15 speaker Bang & Olufsen surround sound system, and a multicolour ambient interior lighting package that includes LED light elements in 30 selectable colours, creating a really distinctive nighttime feel. As for those screens, well, the 10.1-inch MMI colour centre dash monitor is almost twice as big as the one provided in the previous generation model and comes admirably kitted out, even on entry-level variants. 3D navigation is included, along of course with a DAB tuner and Bluetooth, and you don't have to pay extra for a 3-year subscription to a suite of Audi Connect media connectivity features. Amongst other things, the Connect package delivers online media streaming, a Google Points of Interest search function, a comprehensive Audi online traffic information system, plus news and weather feeds via high-speed 4G internet access using an embedded SIM card with no data charge. That's all very nice, but what you don't get is the kind of lower centre console controller dial that the first generation Q3 used to have, the kind of thing that makes life so much easier on, say, a rival BMW X1 or X2. Nor, even more annoyingly, does this central screen have any physical controller knobs, which means that any command that you want to give to it that can't be conveyed by voice requires the need to stab away at the touchscreen. In compensation, smartphone mirroring's well provided for here. In those rival BMWs, it costs extra and doesn't include Android Auto. Here, as standard across the range, you get both that setup and Apple CarPlay as part of the usual Audi smartphone interface. Anything this centre screen can't tell you, and much that it can, is covered off by the configurable Audi Virtual Cockpit instrument binnacle screen I referenced earlier. This TFT digital monitor comes as standard across the range in 10.25-inch wide form, but there's also the option at extra cost to upgrade to the 12.3-inch display we've got here. Either way, it works as usual with two selectable layouts: a classical view that prioritises a couple of prominent dials separated by an information screen, and an infotainment mode, which shrinks the pair of gauges to allow more central space for various data readouts or a full-width navigation setup. What else? Well, you have to pay extra to get lumbar support for these well-shaped front chairs, and the way they position you isn't especially commanding, given that this is supposed to be an SUV. You're well aligned with the pedals though, and there's plenty of adjustment for both seat and wheel. Your view out is aided by reasonably slim windscreen pillars, but rearward visibility is slightly compromised by the thick rear pillars and angled rear screen, so it's just as well that all variants get standard rear parking sensors. Everything seems to have been screwed together very tightly by the Hungarian factory, but you'll find lower quality materials further down the dash in the sort of areas where you might have hoped this Audi would be a class above the equivalent Volkswagen, Seat or Skoda models that share this car's engineering. As for practicality, well, there are decently shaped door pockets long enough to take a 1 litre bottle of water, and there's a useful non-slip cubby directly below the climate controls, which is handy for throwing keys or a wallet into, but which seems primarily meant for your phone, which is why twin USBs and an optional wireless charging mat are provided here. Below the gear stick, there are twin cup holders and a coin tray, plus further storage in the ratcheting height armrest behind that. There are illuminated vanity mirrors in both sun visors and a ticket clip in the driver's one. In addition, an optional storage pack gives you a further stowage area under the front passenger seat. The glove box is lockable and incorporates a pen clip, but is somewhat compromised in capacity by all the media equipment that must be housed within it. Plus, there's no overhead compartment for your sunglasses. Time to take a look in the back. Now, there ought to be big improvements here too, given this second generation Q3 model's extra 77mm increase in wheelbase. That's enabled the fitment of rear doors that are wider than those in the previous model. And once you've used them to gain entry, you'll find a much more spacious rear cabin than the one on offer in the previous generation version of this design. Now, the key change here lies in the addition of a sliding, reclining seat that gives this Audi a real advantage over most of its rivals in this segment. Such a thing costs extra on a BMW X1. You can't have it at all on, say, Volvo's XC60 or Jaguar's E-Pace. This bench can go back and forth over a range of 150mm, and it's a 1/3, 2/3 split, so that you can have one part of it forward and part of it back, which you might want if, for instance, you've got a child seat on one part that you need to turn around to tend to, and an adult passenger sitting on the other. Obviously, in its forward position, knee room will be tight, except for small children, though these scalloped out seat backs help. But with it pushed right back, as of course it will be most of the time, even a couple of 6-footers will be able to stretch out in a way that you simply wouldn't expect to be able to in a car of this class. The seat back reclines through 7 different angles for greater comfort on longer journeys, and the high roof means that there's plenty of headroom too. Now, of course, you can't have everything, and despite the slight increase in body width this time round, the Q3 is still not really suitable for the comfortable carriage of 3 fully sized adults on longer trips. The unfortunate middle occupant will be positioned on this slightly raised, uncomfortable centre section. You're looked after with reasonably sized door bins, storage areas between the seat and the door, central vents and overhead reading lights. But it seems a bit mean to charge extra for these seat back pockets, and there's no rear USB port, the kind of thing you'd expect a supposedly really premium compact SUV might offer. With entry-level trim, you have to pay extra to get this centre armrest with its built-in cup holders too. And out back, well, it's mostly all good news. Activate the powered tailgate and you'll find that boot space has risen markedly over what was provided by the previous generation model. The 530 litre capacity figure representing a 110 litre increase. That's 25 litres more than a BMW X1 and 98 litres more than a Volvo XC40, even before you start moving the rear bench about. If you simply alter the angle of the backrest and make it more upright, you might find that that awkward piece of luggage will fit in. Otherwise, if you push the bench base forward, you can increase cargo capacity to as much as 675 litres, more than you'd get in a huge Audi A6 Avant Estate. Nice touches include a parcel shelf that you can stash under the floor, the option of a hands-free tailgate opening system where you simply wave your feet beneath the bumper, and these LED spotlights built into the hatch lip that shine down to better illuminate the luggage area at night. To get that last feature, you have to specify the storage pack I mentioned earlier, which also includes a floor net and a 12-volt socket. Now, this is a well-shaped space, efficiently square and unimpeded by wheel arch intrusion, with a floor that can be adjusted through 3 levels and a low loading sill height of 748mm. The lip itself, though, has this shiny finish which will easily scratch. 4 body-coloured tie-down hooks feature, as do a couple of bag hooks. Plus, you get little compartments in the left and right-hand corners for smaller items. There's not much more space beneath the boot floor, despite the fact that a space-saver spare wheel doesn't come as standard. On an entry-level model, you have to pay extra for this 40-20-40 split rear seat back too, but you're going to want it as it gives you the flexibility of pushing through longer items into the passenger compartment without disturbing a couple of rear-seated folk. If that's not enough to deal with the cargo you have in mind to take, then you're going to want to fold the seats completely. Unfortunately, there are no catches on the shoulders, so you have to go around to the side and pull up some straps. The capacity with everything flat is 1,525 litres, which is 160 litres more than the previous generation model, an increase that makes quite a difference. You can now, for instance, fit in a mountain bike without having to remove its front wheel. Things like that are important to SUV buyers. Audi knows that most cars in this segment are sold in the £30,000 to £35,000 bracket, so that's where mainstream front-driven 150 PS, 35 TFSI petrol and 35 TDI diesel versions of this Q3 have been pitched. Many buyers will want to find the £1,600 extra necessary to progress from entry-level Sportback to the more dynamic-looking S-Line trim level we have here. Far fewer will want to find nearly £8,000 more to progress to top Vorsprung spec. That's one way of taking the sticker price of your Q3 well beyond the £40,000 mark, territory you'll also find yourself straying into if you select a more powerful engine with lots of options, at which point you'll get to a place where you might as well start considering the only slightly larger Q5. Now, we've got the 35 TFSI variant here with its 1.5 litre petrol engine. There's a premium of £1,600 to opt instead for the 35 TDI version's alternative 2 litre diesel. You're also looking at needing around £1,600 more if you want to move from 6-speed manual transmission to Audi's usual 7-speed S-tronic auto gearbox. A little disappointingly, you can't have quattro four-wheel drive with either of the 150 PS variants. It would have been nice to see that as an option on the 35 TDI. But you have to have the quattro setup, along with S-tronic transmission, further up the Q3 range. Here lies a 40 TDI derivative that gets a more potent 190 PS version of the same 2 litre diesel, and a larger 2 litre petrol unit available in 190 and 230 PS states of tune in the 40 TFSI and 45 TFSI variants. Before we get into the class competition, we'll give you some Audi range perspective here. There's quite a price jump to go from an ordinary A3 Sportback 5-door hatch to a similarly sized and mechanically almost identical Q3. Think £4,000 to £5,000. So you've really got to want this SUV model's higher riding looks and slight improvements in practicality. But let's assume that an SUV is what you want and you're browsing at your local Audi centre. Should that be the case, you might find it difficult to directly compare the Q3 lineup to the range of slightly smaller Q2 models, because most volume Q2 variants use smaller engines than can be had here. Where direct engine and spec comparisons can be made, you'll find a Q3 costing around £3,500 more than its Ingolstadt stablemate. The larger Q5 uses only the engines at the most powerful end of the Q3 range and costs from around £41,000 upwards. Let's get on to the question of how mainstream Q3 variants square up to potential premium C-segment SUV sector rivals from other premium brands, using this volume 35 TFSI variant as our benchmark. Now, if you're buying in this class, you'll almost certainly be considering this car alongside its two key German premium brand competitors, the BMW X1 and the Mercedes GLA. Comparably powerful versions of both these models with entry-level spec will both save you around £3,000 on a Q3. But if with an X1 or a GLA, you move up a rung on the trim ladder to a level of spec that would be comparable with what you get with a base Q3 Sport, the price premium to get yourself the Audi narrows to less than £1,500, which gets you a larger boot and a more versatile sliding back seat. Sounds reasonable. BMW also offers a sportier looking but less practical take on the X1, badged as the X2, comparably equipped versions of which would save you around £1,000 over this Audi, but would offer a lot less space inside. What about the other premium badged C-segment SUV options you might be looking at? Well, two JLR models, the Jaguar E-Pace and the Range Rover Evoque, readily spring to mind. Both are a little smaller inside than this Audi, and both are actually quite difficult to directly compare to this Q3 35 TFSI because they can't be had in front-driven petrol form. To fuel from the green pump with a base 150 PS model in either case, you have to pay extra for four-wheel drive, which would cost you around £3,000 more in the E-Pace and around £6,000 more in the Evoque. You can have both the Jag and the Evoque in 150 PS front-driven form if you're happy with a diesel engine. A comparably specified front-driven E-Pace D150 diesel would probably save you around £2,500 on a Q3 35 TDI and would be better to drive, but would cost significantly more to run. A base spec front-driven Evoque D150 would save you only a fraction over a Q3 35 TDI, but again would be pricier to run, and when specified to the same level as the Audi, would cost you significantly more. We'd also bring four other premium brands C-segment SUVs to your attention. One might already be on your shopping list. Volvo's XC40 is a good product that might be tempting to a potential buyer of this Audi, and one that would potentially save you around £1,500 over the 150 PS Q3 models. But it isn't as good to drive as this Ingolstadt car and has a much smaller boot. You might be less aware of the Lexus UX, which can be yours for a very similar sum to that being asked for this Audi. You can't directly compare a UX to a Q3 because the UX comes only with a petrol-electric hybrid engine, but we think it'd be an interesting alternative, though is considerably less versatile and has a smaller boot. The slightly bigger Lexus NX, also only offered as a hybrid, is slightly more practical in that regard, but that car's pricing starts at around £36,000. We're less enthused about the Infiniti QX30, which is similarly priced against a Q3, because it's not really a purpose-designed SUV, isn't particularly efficient to run, is small inside and can't be had in front-driven form. Those are all your really direct alternatives to a Q3, but if you want to widen your search amongst mid-sized SUVs in this price bracket, you absolutely can. Toyota's RAV4, now only offered as a hybrid, sells in the £30,000 to £35,000 bracket for those who want to trade a premium badge for extra engine technology. Otherwise, if you're spending that kind of sum on a SUV crossover of this kind, you could get yourself a really top-spec version of a smaller mid-size model like a Nissan Qashqai, a Seat Attica or a Ford Kuga. B, a mid to top spec version of a slightly larger mid-size model like a Honda CR-V, a Volkswagen Tiguan or a Mazda CX-5. Or C, a similarly equipped version of a 7-seat mid-sized SUV, like a Volkswagen Tiguan Allspace or a DS7 Crossback. Lots and lots of choices then. If, having considered them, you conclude that it is a Q3 that you really want, then you're going to need to know exactly what's included in the standard spec. Well, there's plenty, even if you opt for base sport level trim. If you've watched other sections of this film or been to a dealer, you might already know that for this second generation model range, Ingolstadt has standardised 2 key features: full LED headlights and a fully digital instrument cluster. Quite a large one too, 10.25 inches in size. Standard driving stuff includes progressive steering, which becomes gradually more direct as the steering angle increases, plus cruise control and a speed limiter speed warning system that allows a maximum speed to be set so that you can take steps to preserve your license on highways or in congested urban areas festooned with traffic cameras. There's also the Audi Drive Select driving mode system that'll allow you to alter throttle response, steering feel and, on S-tronic Auto models, gear shift timings to suit the way that you want to drive. Plus a range of camera-driven safety elements that we'll get to in a minute. Other standard features on the base sport spec models include 18-inch double-arm design alloy wheels, silver aluminium roof rails, a power-operated tailgate, auto headlamps and wipers, LED tail lamps, an acoustic windscreen, power-adjustable heated mirrors, rear parking sensors and an anti-theft alarm. Inside, sport spec buyers get dual zone air conditioning, sport seats, a 3-spoke leather multifunction steering wheel, leather for the handbrake and gear knob and an auto dimming rear view mirror. Plus there's a comprehensive level of infotainment, courtesy of a 10.1 inch MMI Navigation Plus with MMI Touch centre dash screen. Now, this setup includes 3D sat-nav with online map updates, a 6-speaker DAB audio system, a Bluetooth interface, and Audi's improved natural voice recognition, which is said to recognise a wider range of conversational commands than rival setups. There's also the Audi smartphone interface, which works with the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring systems. An included part of the MMI Navigation Plus with MMI Touch package is a 3-year subscription to the Audi Connect media connectivity system, which works via an embedded SIM card that's permanently installed in the car and operates on a data flat rate, so you won't be stung with high roaming charges if you do a bit of intercontinental motoring. The setup comes with an LTE data transmission module that establishes high-speed 4G Internet 3 access. Incorporated Audi Connect services include the high-resolution satellite images of Google Earth, traffic information online, and a point-of-interest search system, as well as information on parking spaces and filling stations, which appear directly on the navigation map, where necessary also with dynamic additional information such as prices and availability. Audi Connect also includes media streaming and online news and weather, plus access to Twitter and to your email inbox. Many Audi Connect functions are brought together in the My Audi app. Now, it connects your smartphone to this Q3, allowing, for instance, navigation routes to be imported seamlessly. The app also supports music streaming and can also transfer your smartphone calendar onto the car's centre dash MMI screen. Plus, via the My Audi app, you can, using your smartphone, do things like remotely lock and unlock the car, consult your Q3's current operational status on things like fuel level and servicing requirements, and even pinpoint where you parked it. All that comes with Sport Spec. Many Q3 owners, though, will be looking for more than that and will want to progress to the smarter S-Line trim level that we have here, which, as usual on any Audi, decks the car out with a slightly different, more dynamic look. In this case, that means smarter bumpers, body-coloured finishing for the front spoiler and platinum grey trimming for the front spoiler blade, the front side air inlet frames, the side skirt inserts and the rear diffuser. You also get 19-inch 5 twin-spoke dynamic design alloy wheels. And there's sport suspension, which can be exchanged for the ordinary softer standard damping setup at no extra charge. Inside, the sport seats get part twin leather upholstery and embossed S-line badging. Plus there's a special S-badged steering wheel, stainless steel pedals, a black cloth headlining, illuminated branded door sill trims and dark matte brushed aluminium dash inlays. Also included are rear privacy glass, an interior ambient lighting pack and a 40-20-40 split for the rear backrest. If you can afford from there to make the expensive jump to top Vorsprung spec, then you'll get, well, virtually the whole contents of this Ingolstadt maker's option list thrown at this Audi. If you know your Q3s, you'll recognise the top spec version by its huge 20-inch 5V-spoke star design matte titanium shaded diamond cut alloy wheels and its black styling pack, which adds black highlights to various parts of the exterior. Plus the bumpers get contrasting Manhattan grey finishing, there are black roof rails and you get dynamic scrolling front and rear indicators along with matrix LED headlights that adapt to the road and other traffic. Headlamp washers and adaptive suspension that works through the Audi Select Drive mode settings also come included. Inside, Q3 Vorsprung models get a panoramic glass sunroof and a Bang & Olufsen 3D sound system with 15 speakers, 680 watts and a 16-channel amplifier. There's also leather and Alcantara upholstery, electrically adjustable heated front seats with powered lumbar support, Alcantara decorative trim on the dashboard and door armrests, and a flat-bottomed 3-spoke leather multifunction sports steering wheel with gear shift paddles. Vorsprung spec buyers also get a wireless charging mat, power folding mirrors, an extended ambient lighting pack with 30 selectable colours and some extra camera-driven safety features that we'll cover off in a moment. On to options. If, as is most likely, you're considering either a Sport or S-Line spec Q3, you'll find that many of the Vorsprung spec features just mentioned can be added in at extra cost. On this S-Line trim test car, for instance, we've got the extended ambient lighting pack, the flat-bottomed sports steering wheel, and powered adjustment, powered lumbar support and heating for the front seats. We don't have adaptive suspension here, but we wish we did. The stiffened S-Line sport suspension, if you choose it on an S-Line, makes that variable damping option quite desirable. And on lesser Q3s, you can pay extra to have the matrix LED headlamps, the panoramic glass sunroof, the Audi phone box wireless charging mat, and the power folding mirrors. You can make the interior of a lesser Q3 just like the Vorsprung Model 2 if you add in the leather and Alcantara upholstery and the Alcantara decorative trim on the dashboard and the door armrests, which can be ordered in amber brown, steel grey, or even, if you're feeling extrovert, bright orange. Buyers of Sport or S-Line spec'd Q3s will also be prevailed upon by the salesperson at their Audi centre to consider the merits of 2 extra cost packs available with this car. So let's look at those. The Comfort and Sound pack gives you heated front seats, front and rear parking sensors, the extended ambient lighting pack, and that 15-speaker Bang & Olufsen 3D sound system, plus a cross-traffic assist rear package that warns you of oncoming vehicles when you're reversing out of a space. It's all another £1,000, but hey, go on, treat yourself. If you really can't stretch to that, but still want an audio enhancement, there's the optional Audi sound system that we've been trying here, which offers a more modest 10-speaker 180-watt hi-fi upgrade. Now, I mentioned that there were 2 key options packs. The other is the parking pack, which gives you a park assist system that'll automatically steer you into spaces, along with power folding mirrors and that cross-traffic assist rear package. The parking pack also includes a 360-degree camera system where wide-angle lenses cover the close-range area around the vehicle as you manoeuvre it, displaying with a choice of image representations in the MMI centre dash display. A more straightforward rear-view camera is a separate option if you want it. What else? Well, another key option is the larger 12.3-inch virtual cockpit instrument binnacle screen we've been trying here. We'd also be tempted to buy the optional data package for the MMI Navigation Plus with MMI Touch Center Dash Screen, which enables you to create a Wi-Fi hotspot in your Q3. You can also add in advanced keyless entry and adaptive speed assist, which automatically keeps you a safe distance behind the vehicle in front at highway speeds. With an S-tronic gearbox, adaptive speed assist covers a speed range of 0 to 124 miles an hour, and in stop and go traffic can seamlessly brake you to a standstill, then automatically move the car away again. If you're buying in at the base sport trim level, you might also want to add in the more basic ambient lighting pack that Audi offers, plus maybe also rear privacy glass and the 40-20-40 split rear backrest. Aesthetics will be key to likely Q3 buyers, so let's get to those. Bear in mind that unless you specify your car in solid Ibis white, you'll be paying Audi more for your choice of paintwork. There's a wide range of ritzier metallic and solid shades, including some quite bright ones. Pulse orange, anyone? We've got a more restrained solid turbo blue here. Surprisingly, there's no option to have a contrast roof colour. Wheel choice will be key too. With sport trim, there are alternative 18 or 19-inch rims, and with S-Line spec, there are alternative 19 and 20-inch rim choices. And practicalities? Well, as usual with Audis, we'd prioritise the fitment of a space-saver spare wheel, since you only get a fiddly tyre repair kit as standard. You can add in a folding tow bar, and you're probably going to want the storage pack, which gives you a storage compartment under the front passenger seat, storage nets on the backs of the front seats, and for the boot area, a floor net, a 12-volt socket, and 2 LED lights in the tailgate to illuminate the luggage compartment. On to safety. Now, standard on all Q3s now is a pre-sense front system that scans the road ahead as you drive for potential accident hazards. This setup also includes pedestrian and cyclist recognition that specifically searches for pedestrians and cyclists who might be about to move out in front of you, and if necessary can initiate braking to avoid them. It even works in situations where visibility is poor, such as in fog. If a hazard is detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or aren't able to, automatic emergency braking will be initiated. At this point, the Pre-Sense Basic package, another standard feature, kicks in. As part of that, the seat belts will be electronically tensioned, the windows closed, and the hazard warning lamps switched on, all to better prepare you for any impact. Standard camera-driven features this time round also include distance warning, which shows you if you're getting too close to the vehicle in front. And lane departure warning is also now standard, alerting you if you drift out of your lane, then applying subtle corrective steering intervention to ease you back to where you ought to be. Audi Side Assist is also standard, alerting you if you're about to dangerously pull out in front of another vehicle when there's an oncoming vehicle in your blind spot. Also included on all Q3s is the Audi Connect Safety and Service eCall system, which automatically alerts the emergency services following a serious accident. All versions of this car additionally get more familiar safety features like twin front, side and curtain airbags, though no driver's knee bag, Isofix child seat fastenings, a tyre pressure monitoring system and anti-whiplash front head restraints. On top of this, there are the usual electronic systems to try and ensure that neither of these features will ever be needed. That means ESC stability control and an ASR traction control system. There's ABS braking, of course, and panic stops will be advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard warning lights. Plus, there's a hill hold assist feature, which was only optional on the previous generation model, which stops you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. As for going further, well, as an option, you can talk to your Audi Centre about rear side airbags and high beam assist, which automatically dips your headlights at night in the face of oncoming traffic. Now, I mentioned earlier that Audi's Cross Traffic Assist rear package comes included if you go for either the Comfort and Sound Pack and the Parking Pack. You also get that feature as part of the standard spec on the top Vorsprung models. Plus, at that top level in the range, there's standard emergency assist, which works with the lane departure warning and adaptive cruise assist systems, and will know almost instantly if there's ever a situation of complete driver inactivity while the vehicle is moving, say if you were suddenly taken ill, for instance. Now, in such a scenario, the Q3 will be held automatically in its lane and gradually slowed to a stop while the hazard warning lights are activated. Efficiency showings usually relate directly to vehicle weight, so it's a touch disappointing that despite its stiffer, lighter MQB platform, this second generation Q3 is 75 kilograms heavier than its direct predecessor. That leaves it weighing in at about 1.5 tons, a little more than a BMW X1 and significantly more than a Mercedes GLA. Elsewhere in the class though, rivals are weightier, especially the JLR products. Think in terms of an equivalent Jaguar E-Pace or Range Rover Evoque being 250 to 300 kilograms heavier than a comparable Q3. So Audi's done better than most when it comes to issues of weight. But the brand has made up the slight shortfall over the best of its premium rivals by maximising the efficiency possible from its latest range of Euro 6D temp compatible TFSI and TDI engines. To the point where it's easy to believe Audi's claim that efficiency levels have taken a step forward with this second generation model, though it's difficult to get a real idea of just how much because of the industry's change to the latest stricter WLTP, that's World Harmonised Light Vehicle Test Procedure, rating cycle. The stats I'm going to quote here are WLTP ones. Bear in mind, if you're comparing, that the figures other competing brands quote may have been WLTP ones converted back to NEDC status to make them look better. I'll start with the 1.5 litre 35 TFSI petrol variant I'm driving for this test. Thanks to cylinder deactivation technology that sees two of its cylinders deactivated under light to medium throttle loads, a manual sport version of this variant on 18-inch wheels is able to return up to 40.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and up to 140 grams per kilometre of CO2, which means a benefit in kind taxation figure of 29%. With S-tronic auto transmission, the 35 TFSI model's fuel figure falls fractionally to 39.2 miles to the gallon, and the CO2 reading can improve to as much as 131 grams per kilometre. If you order your Q3 35 TFSI with this test car's ritzier S-line trim and larger 19-inch wheels, you'll hit the readings we just gave you only by the merest fraction. The 2-litre 35 TDI diesel model is equally efficient by the standards of its class. A manual sport version of this variant on 18-inch wheels manages up to 42.2 miles to the gallon and up to 145 grams per kilometre of CO2. With S-tronic auto transmission fitted though, the same car's figures would improve significantly to up to 48.7 miles to the gallon and up to 123 grams per kilometre of CO2, which again means a benefit in kind taxation figure of 29%. To give you some overall segment perspective on these petrol and diesel readings, a BMW X1 returns very similar figures, but the older tech engineering of a Mercedes GLA and the extra weight of a Volvo XC40 leave these two rivals about 10% from the readings that you get from an equivalent Q3. As you'd expect, given their extra weight, an equivalent Jaguar E-Pace or Range Rover Evoque are even further behind. The 190 PS 40 TDI S-tronic Quattro variant manages figures of 40.4 miles to the gallon and 146 grams per kilometre of CO2. We'll also give you some figures for the 2-litre TFSI petrol engine. With S-line trim, the 40 TFSI Quattro S-tronic version manages up to 32.5 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 165 grams per kilometre of CO2. Again, with S-line trim, the top 45 TFSI Quattro S-tronic derivative manages up to 31.7 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 171 grams per kilometre of CO2. Of course, Audi hasn't just achieved this showing through lightweight and careful engine design. Other important contributors this time around include sleek aerodynamics, the usual engine stop-start setup, and an effective brake energy regeneration system. If your Q3 has S-tronic auto transmission, it'll also offer a coasting function that at cruising speeds will disconnect the gearbox from the powertrain, leaving the engine to idle until you next need it. As you'd expect, there's a gear change recommendation feature in the instrument binnacle's central display screen, and of course there's an efficiency option in the Audi Drive Select driving mode system that focuses all of the car's systems on maximum frugality. What else? Well, there's an energy consumers section on the dash display that shows you which cabin elements are drawing upon running cost efficiency, and a servicing section too, telling you when the next garage visit is due. On the subject of regular maintenance, as usual with Audi models, if you cover a low annual mileage, that's less than 12,000 miles a year, your Audi Centre will suggest annual checks. If you cover a higher annual mileage than that, the car will be able to use onboard sensors that check oil quality to tell you how frequently garage visits will be needed, depending on how it's driven. With careful use, servicing intervals could be as much as 24,000 miles apart. Overall maintenance costs can be kept down if you go for one of the prepaid servicing plans that you'll be offered at initial purchase, which can cover you up to a maximum of 5 years and 90,000 miles. You may be interested to know that this car can even book its own service appointments via an Audi Connect safety and service system app. As well as providing emergency calling and online roadside assistance, this feature can, at the appropriate time, send a service request direct to your local dealer. Alternatively, you can sign up for Audi Service Request, which uses the onboard Wi-Fi to enable your car to communicate with the dealer. As your Q3 nears the time when work will be needed, the diagnostics alert your nominated local Audi centre will then contact you to book in a convenient time. Another neat service your dealer can offer you is the so-called Audi Cam system. Here, technicians carrying out workshop inspections on your Q3 can focus a handheld Audi Cam camera on specific problems, accompanying the image with a verbal diagnosis to create footage that can be sent to your computer or smartphone. That way, you'll know precisely what work you're authorising on your car. On to residuals. After 3 years and 60,000 miles, industry experts CAT reckon that a Q3 35 TFSI S-tronic Sport model would be worth 44% of its original asking price. That's better than a rival BMW X1 S-Drive 18i DCT Sport, which gets 39%, but it's a fraction behind equivalent Mercedes GLA 200 and Volvo XC40 T3 models, respectively rated at 45 and 47%. Still, Audi's certainly in the ballpark, which translates into a near class-leading pence per mile figure for this 35 TFSI variant, one of the stats that fleet managers most commonly look at. Over 3 years and 60,000 miles, CAT reckon that a 35 TFSI S-tronic Sport variant would cost 42.20 pence per mile to run. That's fractionally behind the rival Mercedes GLA 200 DCT Auto, which is 39.82 pence per mile, but fractionally ahead of a BMW X1 S-Drive 18i DCT, which is 42.59 pence per mile, and the Volvo XC40 T3, which is 42.57 pence per mile. On to insurance groups. For this 35 TFSI, it's Group 24E for Sport or S-Line trim, or Group 27E for Vorsprung spec. For the 40 TFSI variant, it's Group 30E for Sport trim, 31E for S-Line spec, and Group 34E for the Vorsprung version. For the 45 TFSI, it's Group 33E for the S-Line version and Group 36E for the Vorsprung variant. As for diesel, well, the 35 TDI version is rated at Group 25E in Sport spec, 26E in S-Line form, or Group 29E in Vorsprung guise. The 40 TDI rates at Group 30E in Sport and S-Line trim and Group 34E in Vorsprung form. We'll finish by covering the warranty. Most cars in this class get 3 years of cover, but whereas rival brands BMW and Mercedes don't limit your mileage in this period, Audi rather meanly restricts you to 60,000 miles. Optional extra cost packages can extend the cover to either 4 or 5 years. How should we judge this second generation Q3? There are probably more interesting cars of this kind that you could consider. Whether there are any better ones though is another question. This is, after all, now the most practical and versatile premium model in its segment. Inside, it also feels the most technically advanced car in its class, courtesy of its virtual cockpit instrument screen and its standard interactive Audi Connect media connectivity. What else? Well, the efficiency of the TFSI and TDI engines is difficult to better in the segment, and the previous model's lacklustre efforts at camera-driven safety have been well and truly corrected this time round. Some premium rivals may initially look a touch cheaper, but if you factor in Audi's quite generous levels of standard specification across the range, the value proposition is quite strong here too, at least for a car of this kind anyway. You might wish that all of this had been delivered with the kind of fashionable freedom of an Evoque, the avant-garde design of an XC40, or the agile driving dynamics of a BMW X1. We wish that too, but you can't have everything. Plus, of course, you're paying a lot of money for a Q3 and getting in return an SUV no bigger than a value brand Qashqai-class model that might save you £10,000 to £15,000 over what Audi is asking here. But then that's an issue common to all premium branded SUV C-segment contenders. This one, like the best of its rivals, delivers everything you'll really want from this class of car with a different and really appealing depth of engineering and quality, which all contributes to the extra dose of sheer feel-good factor that you'll get from having one of these on your drive. The way that Audi has packaged all of this up won't appeal to everyone, but a certain kind of customer will probably like it very much indeed.